So, if you've ever wondered why Trump came down so hard during the ICE riots in Los Angeles, you've got to take a step back. You have to look at how riots have influenced elections in this country for decades. Riots have been changing the course of American politics for over 50 years. We all see the big headlines, the chaos on screen, the fire and fury. But what we don't always catch is the next chapter, how it changes who people vote for. Research shows a clear pattern. When protests turn violent, voters lean right. But when protests stay peaceful, things shift left. This trend was much more prevalent and influential than you might realize. I was even shocked when researching how big of an impact it has had on America. While politicians and pundits argue over policy, most people are just reacting to see who can bring the chaos under control. Let's take a look at how riots, and even the threat of riots, have played out in election after election, and how politicians have either ridden the wave or gotten wiped out. Watts Riots. Reagan becomes governor. In 1965, a traffic stop in the Watts neighborhood of LA escalated into full-blown riots. 6 days of violence, 34 people killed, thousands arrested. It was one of the first times Americans saw a major city burn on live TV. A year later, a former actor named Ronald Reagan, with zero political experience, won the California governor's race in a landslide. His message? Law and order. Who would have thought that the darkest horse with the right message would win out of all the competent and experienced contenders for the nomination and then the election? That theme would repeat over and over for the next 50 years. Watts gave Reagan his moment, which made his political career. He looked like the steady hand when things felt like falling apart. Have you ever heard that? I haven't until I started researching this project. 1968 DNC protests. Nixon gains momentum. In 1968, the Democratic National Convention in Chicago became a full-blown national television disaster. Protesters and police clashed in the streets outside while Democrats argued inside. The whole scene looked chaotic, divided, disorganized and volatile. The chaos helped one-time loser Richard Nixon build momentum. He didn't need to win the argument. He just had to look like the guy who could bring the noise down, say law and order, and point out the chaos. Those violent images and dysfunction broadcast all over America gave the impression that the Democrats were the party of chaos and incompetence. At the same time, Nixon pushed a simple message, law and order, and that was enough to sway just enough voters who just wanted the fires to stop. Rodney King riots. Clinton gets tough. Oh yes, the riots can end up badly for Republicans also. In 1992, when 4 LAPD officers were acquitted after beating Rodney King, even though the whole thing was caught on video, Los Angeles erupted again. President George H.W. Bush seemed slow to respond. Detached, disinterested and flat. Bill Clinton, on the other hand, came in hot. He condemned the violence, talked tough on crime and managed to sound more in control than Bush. For a Democrat, that was rare, but not the last time. Bill balanced addressing injustice and demanding order, which won over nervous suburban voters. It helped seal the deal for his presidential win. O.J. Simpson trial, crime bill and GOP wave. Just 2 years later, the country got swept up in the O.J. Simpson trial, the murder, the Bronco chase, the media circus. It was everywhere. Tensions over race and crime were already high, and O.J. Simpson's trial just poured gas on the fire. After 2 years of deadlock in Congress, Bill Clinton and Joe Biden, the writer of the crime bill, pushed the legislation through a Democratic Congress just 2 months before the midterm elections. But it was too little, too late. With voters' nerves frayed, worried about the potential outcome of the O.J. Simpson trial and tired of the uncertainty, in November, Republicans flipped the House and Senate, picking up 54 House and 8 Senate seats. It was their biggest win since the 1940s. The emotional fallout from the O.J. trial caused the most significant political shift in America's modern history. It pushed a policy that was to directly lead to over 1 million people being sent to prison. Baltimore riots. O'Malley collapses, Hillary steps in fast forward to 2015. Freddie Gray dies in police custody in Baltimore, and the city explodes with protests and riots. Suddenly, everyone's looking at Martin O'Malley, former mayor of Baltimore and then a 2016 presidential hopeful. His record of aggressive policing back when he was mayor? It might have worked in the general election. Still, during the primaries, the new Black Lives Matter movement hounded O'Malley, and the riots made him look feckless. He was Hillary Clinton's only real centrist challenger in the primary, but once the riots happened, his numbers tanked. Black Lives Matter activists followed him everywhere, and he couldn't shake the stigma of being Baltimore's mayor. That cleared the field for Hillary. But instead of taking a clear stance on the unrest, she hedged, tried to be careful, tried to please everyone, and ended up inspiring no one. That wishy-washy messaging, it cost her both black voters and suburban moderates in the general election. BLM protests, Trump wins. Between 2014 and 2016, police shootings in places like Ferguson and Dallas led to the rise of Black Lives Matter. Most of the protests were peaceful, but the media focused on the fires, the clashes, and the looting. Donald Trump saw an opportunity. He branded himself as the law and order guy, slammed the unrest, and promised to bring control back. That message landed. Voters who were scared or fed up saw him as the guy who wouldn't take any nonsense. Hillary? Once again, she tried to walk a tightrope, sympathetic to protesters, but afraid to alienate the middle. She ended up not motivating either group. George Floyd riots, Trump spirals, Biden wins. In 2020, everything exploded after the murder of George Floyd. Protests spread nationwide. Some stayed peaceful, others turned into riots. Cities burned, police stations were overrun. It felt like the country was cracking. Trump, who built his brand on being the strong man, looked lost. He tweeted, blamed local leaders, sent in federal agents way too late, and nothing calmed down. He didn't look like the Hammer anymore. He looked like the guy holding a megaphone yelling at the wind. Now here's the twist. Joe Biden, remember the guy who wrote the 1994 crime bill, one of the hardest-line crime laws in modern US history, suddenly looked like the steady hand. He'd been the most right-leaning Democrat on criminal justice in the primaries, and now he looked calm, competent, and like someone who could handle a crisis. Trump unraveled. Biden didn't have to do much. Joe was a right-wing Democrat in criminal justice, looked calm, and people thought he had a steady hand. Of course, violence in other nations like Ukraine and Afghanistan made Biden look bad and played a big part in handing the presidency back to Trump. ICE riots in LA. Trump reacts fast. Later in 2025, protests flared up again, this time outside ICE detention centers in Los Angeles. It looked a lot like a riot, clashes with federal agents, chaos outside government facilities. This time, Trump didn't wait. He called in the Marines, no hesitation. He had learned from the George Floyd chaos and from Bush's slow response to the LA riots back in '92. He knew looking weak during a riot was a political death sentence, and this time he moved fast. This tells us that when riots break out, voters panic and vote right. When protests stay peaceful, voters feel hopeful and vote left. It's been this way for decades. Watts, Rodney King, OJ, Baltimore, George Floyd, ICE, different names, same story. And whether they know it or not, politicians who speak of law and order get elected. In the end, riots do one thing. They change elections. The party that looks like it's taking control usually wins, and the one that seems checked out, they lose. Right now, Trump may have outmaneuvered the Democrats, but hey, it's a long road to the midterms. Hopefully both sides understand something simple. You're done if you look clueless during a riot. It's been this way for decades. Watts, Rodney King, OJ, Baltimore, George Floyd, ICE, different names, same story. And whether they know it or not, politicians who embrace order win. If that made you feel uncomfortable, good, that's the point. And hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Just remember, good feelings and doing good are not the same thing. Crack cocaine feels good at the moment, as does defending violent criminals, but that doesn't mean you are doing good.